In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to do a compression fitting on residential plumbing. I'm also going to show a few things that you shouldn't do as well. And the first thing you shouldn't do is put PTFE or Teflon tape for where the compression nut will attach to the fitting. And the reason you don't want to do that is because it just won't help anything. It won't prevent any leaks whatsoever, because that's just not where the critical junction is. The critical junction is right where the copper inserts into the valve. So that is where you want to stop the water flow. And because the Teflon tape doesn't go into that area, doing the tape on the threads isn't going to help anything. So you can see right there how the olive connects into the valve. And if you put it into the compression nut, you can see the threads are nowhere really near that olive, or also known as a ferrule. And in fact, if you're going to get a leak, it'll probably be right around the end of the compression nut, and probably not towards the valve. So putting that Teflon tape just doesn't do anything. Now, pipe dope or pipe fitting compound is going to be the same deal. You don't need it on the threads. Basically, you don't need anything on those threads. It just doesn't make any sense to do it. I don't think it would hurt anything necessarily, but it's just not going to help. One thing to do is to make sure that the copper pipe is cleaned up. You don't want stickers. You don't want any debris on it. If it's damaged in any way, like dented, that's going to be no bueno. Don't use that pipe in that way. And you want to make sure the top of it is squared off and that there's no burrs, because obviously everything fits together and compresses. So you don't want any damage on the pipe, and everything's going to go together just like that. So it's going to go compression nut, then the olive, also known as a ferrule, and then the actual valve fitting. Another option that I've seen online as well is to use the PTFE tape on the olive as such. Now this makes a little bit more sense than having it on the threads. However, it may cause problems because, as you can see, I didn't do a great job of taping it, but you will get overlap and you could have spots where things won't seat properly. So if your PTFE tape is doubled up in certain spots, there is a chance that there could be a leak at that PTFE tape overlap. It's not that likely, but it could happen, and you could prevent the copper olive from compressing properly. Now, pipe dope is the other option, so you could also see people putting it on as such, and instead of having the PTFE tape there, use the pipe dope in that manner, and you can see that it actually does make a reasonable seal, and you don't run the risk of having your PTFE or Teflon tape overlap itself and create a little gap where water could seep through. However, if you read the packaging on these things, it says very explicitly, do not use pipe dope or PTFE tape when doing this installation. So it is pretty clear in the instructions. So before I do anything else, I'm just going to take the valve and then just draw a line at the max depth of insertion. Now, ideally, the fitting will have a flat spot where you can put your wrench on, because this is sort of a 2-wrench kind of job. And then obviously you're going to use the wrench on the compression nut. So I'm going to be using one wrench on the body of the valve and the other wrench on the compression nut. So when getting everything set up, you put the compression nut on first, and quite honestly, the compression nut is fairly tight when you're putting it on the pipe, and the olive is also fairly snug on the pipe. So nothing's loose putting it on here. And because I've made that mark with the pencil, I know that I want the compression nut and the olive back a little further. So I'll move those back until I can see the line I made with the pencil, and then I'll move everything forward. Obviously, the compression nut needs to make contact with the valve and the threads, and then once that occurs, I'll just use the 2 wrenches to continually tighten it down. Now it just needs to be snug. You should feel it when the compression nut starts to compress the olive, and then obviously you're going to want to compress it a little further, and that olive is what makes the seal. And that's why you don't need the PTFE tape or the pipe dope to do this, because that olive will compress, and having anything else in there could create a situation where the olive doesn't compress properly. Now in this particular valve, there is also a nut on the other side with an olive on it as well. Obviously, I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes, so I'm not going to do anything with that, but that's how it all goes together. If you do have a leak when you turn the water on, I would recommend tightening the compression nut until the leak disappears. Anyway, thanks for checking out my video. Don't forget to like and subscribe.